and Myers with FileBound. We are the manufacturers and developers of FileBound and the eNow solution. We've been providing hosted document management solutions and services really to companies of all different sizes since about 2001. But we really rely on experts like Paul and his company IDT to market and sell our solutions. And so IDT is one of our premier partners in the U.S., and they're offering the eNow solution. Currently today in our data center, FileBound hosts just close to 1 billion images. So again, we've really perfected that technology of hosting document management over the web. Before I jump in and log into eNow, just want to give you a quick overview of what you're about to see. eNow is really an affordable way to convert all of your incoming paper invoices into electronic or e-invoices. We're also going to automatically capture information off that invoice with just a click of a mouse so that it's available later on for indexing and geocoding. We can also match line item detail with existing geocodes and then pass information directly into your accounting system. And that's going to allow for that one point of entry on that invoice. eNow is also going to allow you to route invoices electronically to a couple different users in the system for payment approval. And then finally, we're going to store the invoice online for later retrieval. And probably the best part about all of this is that you receive all of the advantages of this automation solution, but there's no software to install. So FileBound and IDT, we're going to handle everything for you. It's going to be stored safely, securely, and it's going to be available whenever you need it. eNow does this for a quarter an invoice. So bottom line today, it's a solution that's going to allow you to eliminate work, eliminate mistakes, and eliminate costs. So let's log in and take a look. You'll notice when I log into eNow, I'm brought to a home screen here where I have a very simple 4-step process sort of outlined for me. Number one, add content. Very simple. In this case, content, we're talking about invoices. Number two, indexing that content. So we're going to assign key pieces of information to those invoices, such as the invoice number, the amount, the date, etc., so that we can find those invoices later on. And number three, process that content. Processing the content means a couple things. We can assign the geocodes at this time. We're going to route that invoice to a couple of users in the system for their approval. And then finally, as a part of processing that content, we're going to export all of the information, all of the data out of eNow and into your accounting system. And then four, finally, again, we're gonna keep that invoice stored online so that you can search and retrieve and find it later on. So let's just step through this 4-step process. Number one, add content. And if we had a couple invoices into the system here, we have really two options. You can add invoices using a desktop scanner and scanning them in, or you can use a copier and then import them into the system. In this case, I'm just going to browse out to a location here on my computer, add a couple invoices into the system. Now, as these documents are coming into the system, we're going to automatically capture information on the invoice so that it's available later when we go into the indexing. So back on my home screen at this point, we've really completed step one. We've added those invoices into the system. You can see my indexing queue here has gone up to 8. If I choose now number 2, index that content, I'm going to be brought to an indexing queue where I have a list of invoices here that are available for indexing. So I'm just going to grab one of these invoices and bring it into the viewer. At this point, I will actually be able to point and click on the document and fill in those key pieces of information. So watch over here on the left-hand side while I grab the invoice number here. And I can rubber band around the vendor, grab the invoice date, scroll down, get the invoice amount, the department, and finally the divider. And next, I will capture the line item detail, and this is going to be populated down along the bottom here. So Same type of deal. If I rubber band around the quantities, those are going to be populated down there, as well as the descriptions, unit price, and then finally the line total. Once I have all of that information captured, I'm going to go ahead and just save this invoice. I'm going to be brought back to the e-indexing queue where I could choose another invoice to index. In this case, I'm just going to back out and come to my home page. Just to illustrate here, we've now completed step 2. Time to move on to step 3 and process that content. Again, processing the content is going to include, routing that invoice onto a user for approval, assigning those GL codes, and then finally exporting all of the data out of eNow and into the accounting system. So if I choose process content, you'll see with the user that I'm logged in as, I have one invoice here waiting for me for processing or approval. So if I choose that invoice, I'm going to be brought back into the viewer here. You can see I'm on step 1 of 3. If I switch over here, I can now assign those GL codes. The great thing about the GL codes, as well as the drop-down list over here, the vendor information, is that we import this directly from your accounting system, so it's all stored and updated from one source. If I assign those GL codes, save those, come back here, check the invoice. If everything looks good, I can go ahead and accept that invoice for approval. I could enter any comments here that are associated with my approval. And at this point, then, it's skipped and gone on to the final step in the workflow. And at this point, this was just a simple one-step approval. And this third step in the workflow is really the final step, and it's the step that's going to transfer all of the invoice information directly into your accounting system. And then from there, you can just initiate your payment process from your normal AP module. Now, once the invoice reaches this final step, like I said, it's going to be automatically transferred into your accounting system. And eNow has direct integrations with Quickbooks, Great Plains, Sage, and SQL. And we also offer a manual export to a CSV file, and that's what I'll illustrate now. So back here on my home page, just to give you an idea of what that export looks like, let me do a line item export of this invoice. So if I choose invoice processing, I say basically I want to export all the invoices that are on that third step or final step in the workflow. I'll choose all the project fields, line item fields to include in the data file, and I'll run this report. And you'll see then, now that I'm prompted with a Microsoft Excel file with all of my data associated with that invoice. Now again, this is just an example of what the data looks like being exported to a CSV file. But again, we have direct integrations with QuickBooks, Great Plains, Sage, and SQL. So that really completes the processing part of eNow. And then, like I said, finally, we're going to allow those invoices to be stored online. So anytime I want to, I could come up here and do a search, by my invoice number, perform that search, and in this case, I just have the one invoice I just processed. I can view that invoice at any time as a historical invoice in the eNow system. I could also perform a search from my accounting system and have this invoice be brought up for display. So back on my home page again, that then really completes all 4 steps in the process. So I hope you guys see that eNow is really, it's a very automated way to process your invoices. It's going to save time, it's going to save money, and it's also going to increase the accuracy of the data going into your accounting system. Again, it's a solution without any software to install. You really have nothing more to purchase, and FileBound takes care of all the technical aspects for you. We would hope that you would just see and use eNow really as an extension of your current invoice processing system. And at a price of 25 cents an invoice, it's something we feel like everyone can afford. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back over to Paul to see if we have any questions here that we can address.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. And you know, as well, we went through, we did collect a few questions that came from the audience. One of them that came up here, Brandon, maybe you can answer right away, was how does this solution integrate with other ERP solutions? And I think you touched on that a bit. Maybe you can just reiterate through how the CSV export, you can go ahead and do that.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, again, you know, we touched on, we do have direct integrations with some of the main accounting systems. I mentioned QuickBooks, Great Plains, Sage, and accounting systems that have a SQL backend. If you have an accounting system that's other than that, we can use a CSV export that will automatically export out of the system, and then your accounting system then could pick up that CSV and import it into the system.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question that came across was basically time to implement a solution like this, and I'll handle that. As far as working with integrated document technologies in our team, what we would do is we would come on site and provide what we call a requirements analysis, as far as take a look at the total number of invoices that your organization is processing, and as far as what data you want to obtain or extract from those invoices, and that we would work with you to implement a solution that we can tie to your ERP solution. And with a solution like this, because it is a completely hosted solution or a software as a service model, we can have organizations up and running in weeks versus months. And really, in all honesty, it'll probably take less time than that, as the FileBound eNow solution should be considered, like we said, an extension of your accounting financial application that's out there. So any other questions that you have that have come across, Brandon?
Yeah, there's a couple questions that have come in here, Paul. One question was, can this scan handwritten invoices? And the answer to that is yes. We can scan handwritten invoices and bring them into the system, store them, and process them, just as I showed. The only limitation there is we wouldn't be able to do, you know, the point-and-click indexing or the rubber banding around that handwriting. There's just no way for the OCR, optical character recognition engine, to pick up handwriting. So you would just manually type that in to the index field as you were processing that handwritten invoice. Let's see here. Had a question here. Does the 25 cents an invoice include storage and archival? Also, how long are the invoices and supporting info stored? We can store the, first of all, yes, the 25 cents does include the storage, and we can store those invoices on eNow as long as you need them. The initial term is 2 years.
And obviously, Brandon, and whoever answered that question, obviously we would work with you guys as far as what your retention schedules would be for that. And you do have options as far as keeping them up live on the system or even migrating that information off of the web-based application here, and we can do that for you. So.
Okay. There's a question here about invoices that are maybe emailed in rather than sent in via the mail. Yeah, that's no problem. You know, we're not, obviously, if it's already in electronic format, we're not going to require that you print it out and scan it in. You could use that import feature and import an invoice into the system that was emailed to you. Another question here on capturing other pieces of data, such as a PO number. You know, the data that I showed that we captured, that was really just configured for a kind of a generic set of data for invoices. If you have another piece of info that you'd like to capture along with that invoice, such as a PO number, that's something that you can configure and add into the system with just a few clicks. And I think that's about it, Paul.
Excellent, and that's all that I have through on my side. At this point in time, here at IDT, we'd like to extend an opportunity to work with each and every one of you that have joined us today and put together a 30-day trial for the FileBound eNow system for those of you that have attended. We'll be following up with all of the individuals via email, and if those organizations are interested in a trial, we will work with you to go ahead and get that set up and configured. Also, at any point in time, if additional questions do come up, we're going to leave our contact information up here as far as questions and answers. Please feel free to call or email myself or Brandon Myers with any questions around the FileBound eNow solution. We thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you taking a half an hour out of your day. We know everyone is busy. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to contact us here at Integrated Document Technologies or at Merrick's Group, the creators of the FileBound eNow product. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great day.